Hello people, welcome to another episode of the video series where we learn Kotlin following along Codecademy's Learn Kotlin course. In the last video, we went through collections and specifically maps. And now in this video, we will learn how to use loops to implement code repetition in Kotlin. Let's get started. We will start by learning the for loop. When we know how many times we want a section of code to repeat, we often use for loop. A for loop starts with the for keyword and is followed by a statement that defines a loop variable followed by identifying an iterator. Here, this is the syntax. You start with the word for, and then you open a pair of parentheses and a pair of curly brackets, and between the curly brackets you put the code. It can be a single line or multi-line code, and this section, what you write in between these curly brackets, will be repeated. But how many times? How many times will it get repeated is defined by the instruction here. Let's look at the syntax. For is a keyword used to declare a for loop. We define I as the loop variable, and this variable holds the current iteration value and can be used within the loop body. Loop body is here, okay, between these curly brackets. And the in keyword is between the variable definition and the iterator. And here the range 1 to 4 is the for loop iterator. So let's repeat. To write a for loop, you start by the keyword for, then an empty pair of parentheses, then an empty pair of curly brackets. So in between these parentheses, you type some loop variable. It can be called I or J or anything actually. And then you put the in keyword, and then you need an iterator. This iterator can be a range, for example, 1 to 4. And this loop variable can be named I, and this means this for loop will run for I equals 1, I equals to 2, I equals to 3, and I equals to 4. So 4 times, okay? This means I will get all of these values in the iterator one by one, and each time I get a new value, the code between these two curly brackets will be run. An iterator is an object that allows us to step through and access every individual element in a collection of values. This can be a real Kotlin collection like a set or a list, or it can be a range like this. In most cases, the iterators we use in for loops are ranges and collections. In this example, the range has 4 elements, 1 to 4, so for loop repeats 4 times. And since it repeats 4 times, and since we have this code in between here and here, so in the for body, in the loop body, then this piece of code will be executed 4 times. So running this will show I'm in a loop, I'm in a loop, I'm in a loop, I'm in a loop in the console. It's important to note that the loop variable only exists within the loop's code block. Trying to access the loop variable outside the for loop will result in an error. Here's an example of using the loop variable within the loop body. Yeah, let's take a look at this example. Let me fix the indentation. Yes. So again, I will be stepped through 1 to 4. So I will get 1, 2, 3, and 4 included. in ranges, both of the sides are included when you use dot syntax. Okay, so since we are printing I equals the value of I, in the first time the for loops gets executed, the for loop body, let's say, gets executed, then I will be 1. The second time I will be 2. The third time I will be 3, and then 4. And then after completing this, it'll exit this for loop. While the above example uses literal numbers 1 to 4 to define the range, we can also use variables to define the boundaries of our loop's range, giving us more dynamic control over our loop's iteration. For example, here, let's say we have a num variable given by the user or calculated elsewhere in our code. We can use it to create an int range, and then we can loop through these values. And each time this will get printed. Since I is keep changing, since it's the loop variable, you'll see a different result. The first time this gets run, it prints I equals 1, then 2, then 3, and then 4. Okay? It can come to you a little bit confusing for the first time, but by time, after you see lots of examples, and more importantly, after you write a lot of examples, then you'll get used to it. Okay? So let's here see the example and then try to solve it. It says create a for loop. Okay, for like this, that outputs hello Cody. Okay, so it should output hello, comma, Cody, exclamation mark. And it says it should output this 5 times. So I need to write an iterator here so that it repeats 5 times. Make sure to use I as the loop variable. Okay, I is the loop variable, and after the loop variable, I need to type in, and then I need to give it a range. The range 1 through 5 as the iterator. Okay, 1 through 5. And a println in the loop body. Okay, all of them are correct. So this will print hello Cody 5 times. But also, like, regardless of this exercise, if you go ahead and type 6 to 10, this also will print hello Cody 5 times. Okay, but it asks us to use an iterator 1 to 5, so we use that one. But there are multiple ways to make this for loop through 5 times. You can use any collection which has 5 elements inside and put it here so that it'll be repeated 5 times. Okay, next step is instead of just outputting text, we need to use the variable I, the loop variable, in the loop body, and add another println with a string template directly below the first println, so the loop creates the following output. So we need to add another println, and then we need to type I space equals space, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These should be printed. So this is the value of I. So I need to use the value of I and inject it into this string template. Since I starts from 1 and starts from 1 here and then ends with 5, this will run great. Okay, let's go to the next section. Controlling the iteration. Sometimes you want to count backwards or count by twos or both, and we can use some certain functions to enhance our iterative abilities. Okay, the functions down to, until, and step gives us more control over range and therefore more control of our loops. The down to function simply creates a reverse order group of values where the starting boundary is greater than the ending boundary. To accomplish this, replace the range operator with down to. So here we used I in 4 down to 1. So if you do this like 11 to 20, this will create a range starting from 11 and goes through 11, 12, 13, 14, goes through 20. Okay? But if you try to do this 20 dot dot 11, this will give you an error. Okay? You cannot do that. If you use this range operator, you need to start by the smaller number first and then the bigger number. If you want to create a reverse order sequence, then down to comes to the rescue. So you can use down to, and this won't give an error now. Instead, it'll create a range of 20, 19, 18, so on, so forth, down to 11. Okay, so this is down to. Cool. In this example, we can see that 4 down to 1 is creating such an output because I now starts with 4, and the first repetition I equals to 4 is printed, then 3, then 2, and then 1. There is also an until function. An until function creates an ascending range like the dot dot operator, but excludes the upper boundary. So 1 dot dot 5 means 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, whereas 1 until 5 means 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5 is excluded. Okay, the last element here is excluded. So sometimes this can come handy. So again, in this example, if you write 1 until 4, then you can see that only 1, 2, and 3 are repeated, and I gets values 1, 2, and 3 each in each repetition, and it'll print I equals 1, I equals 2, and I equals 3. Up until now, each of these operators, including this range operator, have counted up or down by 1. The step function specifies the amount these functions count by. Yes, this is another cool tip. If you use step, then the loop variable I will increase by 2 for every iteration. The last number output is 7, since 2 steps up from that is 9, which is outside the defined range 1 to 8. Let's see this. This can confuse you again. So let's take a closer look. So here we have the for keyword, and then here our iteration control. Oops, yep. And here our loop body. Okay, these already should be familiar to you. We use I as the loop variable, and then in, and then a range. But after defining that, like without this part, this looks an ordinary cool for loop. But now that we add step 2, that means I will start by 1 because the first value it gets is 1. And then after finishing up the first repetition or the first iteration, then it'll be increased by 2. So 1 will jump to 3, then 3 will jump to 5, then 7, and when it becomes 9, it'll be out of bounds of this range, so it won't execute the code. So it will run for I equals to 1, then 3, then 5, and then 7, because 9 is not a valid value between this int range. Cool. Let's do the exercise. Create a for loop. Okay. I as the loop variable, an iterator that starts at 10 and ends at 1. So since it should start with a bigger number, I need to use down to, and then ends at 1. A print statement in the loop body, the loop body, and a print statement with the string template I equals something. Okay, this time did they forget the space, or I don't know. Let's run. Oh, sorry, I forgot the double quotes. Okay, we passed this, but I think I misplaced this code. I need to place this here. Sorry for that. I was showing you some examples there, then I just forgot to pick a correct location. Also, why all of these are, let me fix those. Okay, now it's fixed. Let me run again. Okay, first for loop output 10, 9, 8, 7, and goes down to 1. And now in the second step, it asks me to implement another for loop. Okay, that counts up, but stops just before the upper boundary of the range. Make sure it contains j as the loop variable. The range is starting from 1 up to, but not including 10. So we need to use until. And a print statement including this text, j equals to j. Cool. Let's run this. And then we passed. Finally, we should implement another for loop that iterates over a range in steps greater than 1. Make sure it contains k as the loop variable and then in keyword, a range 1 through 10 as the iterator that counts up by 2. So step 2. And a println statement that prints k equals to k. Let's go ahead and do that. Run the code and you'll see that a new loop does not output the iterator's upper boundary 10. Counting up by 2 from 1 does not include 10. Yes, and we passed the third exercise, our third step. Let's go to the next one. Iterating through collections. Yeah, this is something I like very much. Instead of using a range, we can use the structure of a collection as an iterator. A for loop will iterate through each of the collection's elements with the loop variable holding the value of the current element. We will focus on lists and sets in this exercise and maps in the next one. Okay, cool. So Let's say we have a list called fruit list, which includes apples, oranges, and bananas. If we type for fruit in fruit list, this becomes our collection, or this becomes our iterator. So fruit will take values of apples, and then in the second iteration oranges, and the last iteration bananas. Okay, so when you print I have fruit, then it'll print I have apples, I have oranges, and I have bananas, like this. Okay, so each iteration of the loop will set fruit to the value of current element of fruit list, so that you can iterate a collection. Okay, fruit, this loop variable takes the value of the first element, and the second one, and the next one, and then the next one. It goes like this until the collection ends. When we first learned about lists and sets in collections lesson, we discussed their commonality as well as their differences. An additional similarity is that the syntax for iterating through a list and a set is the same. When iterating through a collection, it's useful to know that what element number or iteration we are at. To iterate through the indices of a collection, you can use its indices property. Yes, this is also a very useful one. Indices start from 0 and goes up to the last index, which is size -1. So it's a very useful property of collections. Here we see the indices of fruit set output. Remember that the first index of a list or a set is always 0. Cool. So since this set has 3 elements, and the first index 0 and the last index 2, if you want to get the range 0, 1, 2, we can use indices property, and it'll print index equals 0, index equals 1, and index equals 2. We can also get the index and the iterator element using the collections with index function. This is also a very useful function. And in this case, we need to destructure the loop variable declaration by declaring 2 loop variables and enclosing them in parentheses. This is rather an advanced example, but you should know these kind of things exist, so that you'll come back to here in Codecademy's course, or you can search online to get the element and the index at the same time using this notation. First, you start by creating a pair of loop variables. The first loop variable will be the index, and the second one will be the item. Okay, the order of them matters. And then you type in, and then instead of giving just fruit index, you use with index function, which will create a collection of pairs. Okay, so these collection of pairs includes the index and the item, index and the item, index and the item. So when you iterate through this, you will have both index and the item. So you can use this to print statements like this. List index is the index of the element fruit. So it'll show up like this. 0 is the index of apples, 1 oranges, and 2 bananas. Okay. Whew, yeah. Let's see how we can use this information now. Implement a for loop using the list mySchedule. There is a list here called mySchedule, which is a list of eat breakfast, clean up work, eat lunch, clean up work, eat dinner, clean up. Okay, let's do this. I think we need to write here for the first time a for loop using the list mySchedule My schedule will be here after the in keyword. But what should be our loop variable? Yeah, here it says task should be the loop variable. So task in my schedule. You can name this anything. I can name this Safa, but just for Codecademy's sake, I'm gonna put task here. Okay, task in my schedule. For each task in my schedule, you can read this statement like this. For each task in my schedule, do this. Okay, this is also another good way of reading the for loops in plain English. The list my schedule as the iterator, a println statement in the loop body that outputs the loop variable. Okay, it'll only output the loop variable, so println task. Cool, let's run this. Okay, we have all listed up here. Great, now look at the set my tasks, which is declared with the same elements as the list. Okay, but this is a set. This is a list, this is a set. So when you create a set with duplicate items like cleanup, 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 it won't get added into the set. Set will remove all the duplicates. So we will see this in action, I guess. Create another for loop that contains task index and task. Okay, a pair of loop variables as the structured loop variables. My tasks using with index function as the iterator. Don't forget the keyword in, and then my tasks dot with index, because we want to get both the index and the task itself. And a println statement to output task index and task separated by a colon. Example output 0, eat breakfast. It should look like this. But instead of 0, we need to use the value inside task index. And instead of the task, we need to use $task. Okay. Let's run this. So 0, eat breakfast. Okay. 1, clean up. 2, work. 3, eat lunch. 4 normally should be clean up, but no, because cleanup already exists, so this will be removed from set. Work already exists, so work also is not included in the set. Then comes eat dinner, so 4 is eat dinner, and then 5, there is no 5 because cleanup has a duplicate in the list already. So through set reduced into this. Okay, eat breakfast, clean up, work, eat lunch, and eat dinner. How was it before? It was like this. Cool, we passed this one as well. Let's go to the next exercise. By the way, let me check how many exercises we have. Oh, okay, nice. We have like 10 lessons or 10 exercises. I'm gonna finish the video after going over the 5th one so that I can create a part 2 for the rest of it. Iterating through maps. Unlike a list or a set, a map is a collection of entries. Entry means key value pair. When using a map as a for loop iterator, we can iterate through each entry of the map or through just the case or just the values. When iterating through a map, the loop variable will hold one entry per iteration. The entry's key and value can be accessed using the properties key and value. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, so let's say we have a map, shirts to 7, pants to 4, and jackets to 2. And let's say we type this item entry or item in my clothes or clothes in my clothes. Okay. When we do that, each time the loop variable will have one entry, one key value pair, and you can use dot value, item entry dot value, or item entry dot key to access the key and the value inside this pair or inside this entry. Cool. Notice that in order to access the attributes in a string template, we surround the loop variable and the attribute in curly brackets. Yes, we already talked about this, I guess. If you have a compound expression here, not only a variable, then you need to surround them by curly brackets. We can also access the key and value of each entry by destructuring using two loop variables in parentheses. This is also a very cool feature of Kotlin. Instead of doing this item entry in my clause, you can use item name, item count, so the key and the value as a pair, like we did with the with index function for lists and sets. We can use this, and my clothes will be destructured into these two loop variables in each repetition. So shirts come to here and 7 come to here in the first iteration, and in the second one pairs of pants come to here and 4 comes to here, and in the third iteration jackets come to here and 2 come to here. Both of these examples have the same output. I have 7 shirts, I have 4 pair of pants, I have 2 jackets. Lastly, we can iterate through just the map's keys or values. A map has the properties keys and values which can each be used as an iterator. Yes. So we can use for item name in myclothes.keys. This will read for each item or for each item name in my clothes keys. Keys are the collection of these. You can iterate these collection, or for the values you can also use that one. By the way, I don't know why they have this. Maybe just to format it better. I don't know. They say here's the output. Cool. Yes, it's just to separate values. One more line. The map favorite colors here holds the names of people and their favorite colors. So Jesse has a favorite color of violet, Megan red, Tamala blue, and Jordan pink. Okay? Implement a for loop that contains, I think we should start here. No, I'm not sure. Okay, a for loop that contains favorite entry. As the loop variable. Cool. Favorite colors as the iterator. And a print statement inside body, which prints the key colon the value. So it should be favorite entry dot key, but since this is compound, I need to surround them with a pair of curly brackets, not square brackets, and then a colon since it wanted a colon, and the same but for the value. Cool. Let's run this and see if it works. I think it worked. So for each entry means these pairs, okay? For each pair, we iterate, we print its key and the value. So key is this, value is this, key is this, value is this. Cool. And now another for loop. I think this time here, color is the loop variable, and we should use the values attribute of favorite colors as the iterator, a println statement in the loop body that outputs the value of each entry, only the value. So println color. Let's run. And we pass this as well. Okay, we finished the first half of loops, and this video will become too long if I continue. So see you in the next episode to learn more about loops.